always go the extra step. And he says, like, always over deliver. When you set a standard, always go a little bit beyond because people don't expect it. And it's the wow factor, but it's also that then they take you seriously. You can tell that it's actually more expensive for him. And he said, it is. My construction cost is higher, yet I deliver a better product that I'm able to sell for higher. And when I rent, I have no vacancy. I have a waiting list for people who want to live there, even though the rents are considered higher. Hello, and welcome back to the Very Real Estate Effect podcast, a show dedicated to real estate investing right here in Quebec. And today, I'm very happy to share thoughts on a visit that I was lucky to be a part of earlier this week, where we met with Ray Junior, a big developer from north of Montreal who developed the Cité Mirabel. And I really want to share some of the key insights that I got from it. So for anyone who's new to the show, thank you for following us. Please share it with a friend who you think could benefit from this conversation. And if you're listening somewhere on your telephone, there's 3 little dots you can press. I think it's in the top left corner, and you can subscribe to the show. It really helps me in reaching out to more people like yourself. So, jumping into it, we took place in a visit yesterday actually of La Cité Mirabel, which was developed by Ray Junior Courtemanche, who's one of the best, most known developer in Quebec. Him and maybe Luc Poirier, where he essentially about 12 years ago, bought a large piece of land along the 15 in Mirabel, and developed phase by phase. And his goal was to build a small city within the city of Mirabel, to build an entire neighborhood. And he's done more than that in a way. And it's not the first time that I meet with him, that I'm a part of meetings, and he's absolutely fascinating by his creativity, by how he approaches things. And there was just a few things that I wanted to share with you. So first of all, what he shared with us is that about 2-3 years ago, they finished one of the buildings, Sens, which holds the world record for the building in the shape of a 7, number 7, the largest in the world. That's about 8-story high, around 300 units, 225 to 250, anyways, around 250 units. And he was mentioning how this was like probably the 7th or 8th building or project that he did on his development, and he couldn't get financing, which I find absolutely astonishing because this guy is so accomplished, and you think that you have institutions that are running after him. But he told us that none of the big 6 Canadian banks actually wanted to do it because it was almost too big for them. And they were doubting like the market absorption, and you're never going to be able to rent this. It was the largest building like north of the Rivière des Mille-Îles, so north of Laval basically, and no bank wanted to follow him. And it's astonishing because he's got a really good track record. He's got the same RBQ license that he does since 25 years. He's never defaulted on a single payment. He's always taken his projects to completion, and yet the banks didn't want to follow him. And it was an eye-opener to, you think that as you get bigger, like things get easier, and they do in some ways. But I guess at some point, once you hit a certain threshold, it actually plays against you because banks are too scared to follow you. So anyways, that's kind of number one. So we went to go visit, and he said that he doesn't reinvent the wheel. He just travels. And when he travels, he always takes ideas of how things are done in other places. And he said, like, for that particular building, 7e Sens, he wanted to have its condos, its rental condos, all included. So the electros, Wi-Fi, internet, electricity. And he wanted people to feel like they're in a resort, that they're in a high-end hotel. So it's electric doors, a large lobby, really nice paintings on the wall. So they have some Quebec artists that lend and that expose some paintings. They're also for sale, and so they're able to rotate the paintings frequently, and it gives it a really nice feel. It almost gives it like a gallery look. And there is plants. There is nice comfy couches to sit on. It's literally like a hotel lobby with a chimney and everything. And in that particular building, there is all the amenities you can think of. There is an indoor golf practice. There's a yoga room. There's entertainment room with foosball, pool tables, large TV, and all that. There is a rather large gym room. There is a pool, sauna, hammam, terrace, inside terrace that's obviously sun exposed for people to, with long chairs and stuff like that. And while we were visiting, it really did give the appearance of a resort. And yet apartments go there for, I think about, and don't quote me on this, you'd have to see them for the exact rental, around like, I think it was 1,800 for a 1-bedroom, 22 to 2,300 for a 2-bedroom, and a 3-bedroom was around 3K a month, something like that. It also comes with indoor parking. Anyways, I'm not here to advertise his project. It's just that there's so many things that hit me that I wanted to share, because as I'm developing the project in Saint-Jérôme, the timing was actually really good. I'm very cost conscious, and for my project to work, it has to be cost effective. And sometimes I think I have the tendency to, I wouldn't say want to cut corners, because I don't, and I want good quality, but what I got from him is that always go the extra step. And he says, like, always over deliver. When you set a standard, always go a little bit beyond, because people don't expect it, and it's the wow factor, but it's also that then they take you seriously. So how did that translate in his buildings? The choice of material was really good. The color schemes, like when we visited the underground parking, I asked him and said, look, it looks like the ceiling, which is bare concrete, has been painted. And he's like, yeah, it's actually like a varnish that we put on the finished concrete. So first of all, it seals it, and it lasts longer, and then it prevents from dust always falling on the cars, so your parking area is a lot cleaner. There is epoxy on the ground, epoxy paint, same thing, to keep it cleaner, and it seals the concrete, and also prevents salt from going to the concrete and eating the rebar, so your concrete lasts longer. All the beams and posts were painted white and yellow, and green where the electrical car spots are. Like, this attention to detail, and that's in the underground parking. Okay, then as you go up in the actual hallways, all the signs, the carpets, the switches, like all of the finishings, it's not that necessarily that much more expensive. You can just tell that everything's been properly thought of. And we've visited projects where it seems like the walls are paper thin. You can, even though it's a new construction, you can hear your neighbor flush the toilet and take a shower, and it's never pleasant to be in a place like this. So good sound insulation, a good choice of material, and attention to detail. And one of them that really hit me was at the top of the ramp coming out of the parking lot on the underground parking, right before the automatic door, there's just a big sign that says, "Have a nice day." And it may seem trivial, but the people who live there, every time they drive out, they actually see that sign and they're like, oh my God, Ray's wishing me a nice day. And when you put all those little details together, when we walked out of that visit, first of all, like, it made us want to actually rent over there. And they said, like, we build communities. We want to have people that have the feeling that they're actually live in a vacation place on a resort all the time. And they've really, really achieved that in those in those buildings, in those developments. And so it was extremely motivating. First of all, I find, like, just talking to Ray Junior for 5 minutes, and then all of your little construction problems or renovation issues seem completely trivial, because he's having difficulty financing for 170 million, and then he pulled it off on budget, on time, and it was really, really encouraging. And so we spent the afternoon. It was a whole group of us. Then we ended up going to go for dinner. And before we did that, he also showed us the spot where he's going to build the Moana. It's not a beach center, it's a centre aquatic center, with slides and everything. And the way he always thinks of incorporating parking. Oh yeah, in some of the other buildings, the ground floor is actually, there's no windows, and it's actually pretty closed off, and it's indoor parking, but on the ground floor, even though there's underground parking like one level down, two levels down. And I asked him, like, why do you do that? And he said, well, because from a rental perspective, people usually don't really like the ground floor, because if they're at the street level, they have the lights of the cars that beam on their windows, and then older people sometimes don't feel safe. And so it was a way for them to get more parking spots on the ground floor, because the ground floor is harder to rent. So he said, we sacrificed 13 rental units, but we got so much more parking. And so now we've been able to resell the parking at about 50K a pop. So when you think about it and do the math, it actually makes a lot of sense. And this is just like a small example of how everything has been well thought of, everything's been optimized, and it's not for cost reasons. Well, some of it is, but it's just, it always for a reason that makes sense in the overall of the project. It's not doing thinner walls because it's cheaper. It's not all these things, and making those decisions and developing the place. And you can tell that it's actually more expensive for him. And he said, it is. My construction cost is higher, yet I deliver a better product that I'm able to sell for higher. And when I rent, I have no vacancy. I have a waiting list for people who want to live there, even though the rents are considered higher. And so it was a really good reminder of the importance of the attention to detail when you're renovating a place. And sometimes, okay, you bought a triplex and you're renovating it, and you have the tendency to think like, oh, it's got to be like, it's got to do it for as cheap as possible. But as cheap as possible, it feels like it when you walk in. It doesn't feel like it's a luxury apartment, even though it's got a very good location and you put 150,000 into the building. So again, like all the choice of light fixtures, of switches, everything that's visible dans la finition, and then the insulation, you don't see it. The sound insulation, you don't see it, but yet it makes a huge difference on the quality of living over there. So, anyways, really, really motivating. And in all his common areas, he really likes the color black. There's a lot of color adjustments. There's plants, and he also prints a lot of huge pictures. Like you have a hallway, and instead of having just like a white hallway or blue or whatever, he'll just print a huge picture of the jungle. And so it gives it such a nice feel when you're over there, because you can tell they didn't just go with the dollar signs and try to minimize it. Same thing with the entertainment room. There's a huge picture of Las Vegas, and you might think like, oh, it looks cheap. No, it actually looks well thought of. Another thing that he mentioned is in the Seven Sens building, I think they said they have like 85 cameras, and you can see them. And one choice that they made was to actually, instead of like trying to hide them in a corner, even though people can see them, they actually just put them at eye level. So, and they're fairly big. And they said it's the most amazing tool for dissuasion. Like it discourages people from misbehaving, because they just see like, oh, they're being watched, and they all know they're being watched. And so there's like, oh, we got to hide the cameras. Look, it's reassuring for people to know that there's cameras. It pushes people to be on their best behavior. And because at first I was kind of shocked in a hallway to literally see it at my head level, just thinking like, what is this big white globe? And then in asking him, it totally makes sense. Anyways, extremely motivating to go see this. And I almost wish I would have done a vlog, because I'm sharing it with you. I'm talking about it, but it's a lot more interesting to visually. Now, one of the big project that he's working on, as I mentioned, is the Centre Aquatique, and he's also going to build 2 hotels, and he's using a different model where actually people can buy a furnished apartment. It'll be rented on Airbnb for you. They will entirely manage it. And what I admire about him is that he's a completely self-made man. I mean, he stopped school at the age of 13 years old because it wasn't working out, and he was working with his dad's garage, who was a mechanic, and he built a landscaping business. And I think by the age of 22 years old, he had like 15 employees or something. Just very successful. And again, like, it's the vision that he has. It's the vision of, I'm going to try to do things a little bit higher end. I'm going to try to do differently that's being done here. And in Cité Mirabel, I think he holds like 2 or 3 world records. Sometimes it's the shape of a building, but it's really funny. And so now it's going to be the first big centre aquatique aquatic center in Quebec, probably I think the largest in Canada, and it's going to include some hotels, some commercial space, and all sorts of outdoor activities, volleyball courts, golf practice, you name it. I mean, the list is longer that I can recall. Also, a permanent wave. Like you can, it's like that permanent wave that you can surf. I think there's going to be even 2 of them. And he's giving people the opportunity to actually be operators. So someone wants to start a business and go rent some space from him, he's creating a whole ecosystem and environment where businesses can thrive, and that is fully integrated. So you have an aquatic center, you're going to have people coming from a little bit further, offer some hotels, offer some apartments to rent, offer some restaurants, offer some outdoor space. And he also has a big consideration for environmental, and he's doing one of the first buildings where the parking is entirely enclosed, even though it's above ground. I think he's got like 7 stories of indoor parking, because he was mentioning he needs about 1,500 square parking spots available per day, as there's about 4,000 people coming on an average day. So just the sheer magnitude and scale of his project was both mind-boggling, inspiring, and again, I greatly admire him. I think he's an amazing guy for what he's achieved and how humble he is. And he's having a conversation and sipping a glass of white wine, and anyways, extremely inspiring. It gave me a huge boost, and I just really wanted to share it with you. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I know it's a little bit shorter. I try to condense a lot of the learning that I got from him. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'll be more than happy to share what I've learned from him. So thank you very much. Stay tuned until next week. Ciao.